Hi all. I'm doing an unboxing of Dungeon Fantasy. This is actually the third copy I've purchased. The first one I got through backing it through Kickstarter in 2016. I wanted all big bundle, so I got the game, the GM screen, a copy of GURP Zombies, a bunch of PDFs, and then a couple print-on-demand books that they included. And then I bought a copy that I gave away back when I used Twitter before I decided to get rid of that dumpster fire. Twitter, not the game. And then finally, this is another copy I got at my local game store because I wanted to support the game in a physical retail channel. When I really like a game, if I buy it online, if I can get it physically in retail, I always like to do that to support the local game store. So I was planning on doing this unboxing earlier, but work and kids and holidays and things kind of kept pushing it back and back. And I ran this game for a couple conventions here in Milwaukee. But last week they announced that Steve Jackson Games announced that the game, while being a success, product-wise, financially was less of a success. So I thought, well, since they're getting close to selling out of the game, I might as well do the unboxing now, because if this is something that you like, you better get it quickly, because they're running out of units in their warehouse, and once it's gone, and you have to paying after-market prices. I always recommend getting games from your friendly local game store, but if you can't, I did see it online for brand new for like $40 or $50, and it normally retails for $60. So at the start, the first thing you get are a couple really nice maps in the game that comes with an adventure, and these maps are used in the adventure. And they're front and back. They're really well illustrated. And they're hexagon maps, so you can use these even in different sorts of games. Maps are always great because I'm not a good map maker. So anytime I can get maps, I always appreciate it, because I tend to run sandbox games. So having maps kind of in a file that I can pull out as needed is really nice. This is the second map for the adventure I smell a rat. Now, if you're not familiar with Dungeon Fantasy, what Dungeon Fantasy is it's built on the GURPS engine. And if you're not familiar with GURPS, it stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing System. And it's basically a toolkit that allows you to play any sort of role-playing game you would want using the one rule system. It has a reputation for being difficult or complicated, and I really don't think it is once you get to the table. What it comes down to as a GM, though, is you have to be able to say, here's the world you're playing in, here's what you're allowed to use and interact with as you build the game. Then it becomes much simpler. But with Dungeon Fantasy, the goal was to help give players a nice introduction input into the GURPS role-playing game. And it actually does a really good job, and it tries to model the classic old-school role-playing feel that, back before hip young people thought that dungeons were passé, and who wants to adventure in a dungeon? And here are the cardboard, they're called cardboard heroes. You can use them as miniatures. It includes the monsters you're going to need in the introductory adventure and what you can use in the game. Another reason why I got this box set is I like having more of the pawns. How do I get these out? Alright, here we go. So, here are the more PC type characters, front and back. And it has that great 1980s feel to it, which I actually really like, because the game's trying to model or emulate more of the 80s style role-playing. And another thing that's kind of nice about Dungeon Fantasy is that it has really great production values, really good art. All the books are perfect bound, but you can see here, really nice art. And what's really cool about the art is they actually tried to make sure that all the armor, all the weapons would be realistically used in a dungeon. So they didn't go for a really highly stylized, kind of like, remember 30, where it kind of looked like a Final Fantasy video game with spiky bits and things. This tried to be more realistic. So the first book is called Adventurers. This is what you use to make your actual adventurers. It's built on GURPS is built on a skill system. You get points, and you can spend those points on character attributes, character traits, character skills, and the more skill points you have, the better your character gets. Dungeon Fantasy defaults to a 250 point system, which is kind of mid-level for a traditional AD&D game. When I run it, I actually back the points down to 150 points because I like lower powered characters. But if you want, something that models old school D&D, or if you come from computer gaming, something that models like the old Might and Magic, Lands of Lore, those dungeon crawling, Eye of the Beholder type games, you'd go for the 250 point character. And they've got the traditional races, dwarf, elf, human, halfling, all those. Cat folk. So you can pretty much build anything you want because this game is fully compatible with GURPS. So if you actually end up really getting into it, or you're coming from GURPS, you could actually take that information from GURPS and really use it pretty quickly here. Exploit is the GM's books. Again, that's a really cool cover. See, that's really evocative of why I think dungeons are kind of neat. Dungeons aren't just about getting loot and killing monsters, even though that's what you do in them. What it's really about is the kind of MacGuffin about why you're there. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, the opening is Indiana Jones trying to get the gold idol. That's a dungeon. But how he got there is a really neat story. This has all the information you need to know as a referee to run the game, build the dungeons, run the players, run combat, run skill contest, all that. And I'm not really going to do much of a review. This is just, I wanted to show people what the product looks like. And I do have a tripod, but I bought this really kind of, it's like $60 tripod for my iPhone at the Apple store. And because I don't really do this for money, I just kind of do it for fun. I wanted to get something kind of simple, but I don't think it really works out too well. The third book you get is a book on spells. It includes all the spells in the game. Again, really good art. Lots of times people would kind of complain about the art in GURPS because it wasn't as high production value as something like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. This book has the production values of something that Wizards of the Coast or Paizo would put out. It is really top of the line. The final book is called Monsters. It includes all the baddies that players are going to fight. And again, has that really great retro, classic monster feel. This is something that I think if you like it or you get it, you're going to love it. If not, you might say, oh, that's kind of chintzy. But it's supposed to kind of mimic, again, that old school role-playing feel. And lots of times people think GURPS can't really do anything, but it really can. And this gives you a really great self-contained, everything you need to run Dungeon Fantasy is in this one box that you can get for $60. They do have some PDFs available to expand it. There's an extra adventure, some extra information, some sample characters. That's all online. But the great thing about dungeon-based or old-school role-playing is you don't really need a lot of content. You create it through play. So much more modern, if you're coming from modern role-playing or, after 3rd edition, is, well, we need all this stuff to tell us what to do. And in earlier editions or earlier role-playing, it was, here's some rules, play, and then just make it up as you go along. And this game really kind of allows for that. And if you end up getting really into it, you can always lean on the GURPS, which has been, 4th edition came out in like 2004, I think. So it's, 4th edition's been around for, 14 years? So, it gives you everything you need to know. The adventure is actually really fun. It's not a huge kind of story backed up adventure. It's really, again, the MacGuffin is you need to go into the dungeon to kill some stuff to get out. It's a great starter adventure. And if you're getting into dungeon fantasy, all I would recommend is create a town, create a crypt or a dungeon near the town, run the I Smell a Rat adventure, and then give players a reason to go to the crypt or the dungeon near the town. Or if you don't want to go right into another quote-unquote dungeon, create something that's similar. Because a lot of times, functionally, lots of role-playing takes place in dungeons from a mechanics perspective, even if we don't call them dungeons. Cities functionally act like dungeons. Forts, crypts, all sorts of different things functionally are a dungeon. We just don't call them a dungeon. So don't think you have to be in a subterranean complex to play this game. You could run this as an urban fantasy going from building to building game. It's going to work fine. It's a really great game. You get 3 dice because GURPS, if you're not familiar with it, runs on a 3d6 system. Roll 3d6. You try to get under a target number. And then they give you some bases for the pawns. If you backed it, you got an extra set of bases, and I believe an extra set of dice that came with it. It's a really great game. I really hope you give it a try. If you have any questions, feel free to post them below. I'll try to answer them. Sorry about the jankiness of the video, but again, it's President's Day and I'm off from work, so I thought I would do this. I wanted to try out the new tripod. I'm going to be doing another unboxing of, I pre-ordered the Munchkin collectible card game, and I was going to cancel it because I was kind of disappointed with kind of the news that they weren't going to be really supporting GURPS with physical releases anymore. But I didn't, I'm a big boy, I can be a little bit sad, but I'm excited to play the Munchkin game. Oh, one thing I wanted to show was, on the side of the box here, here's what the basic set looks like. These 2 books give you everything you need to really run the game. All these other books just allow you to go deeper into specific genres, like zombies, fantasy. Infinite Worlds is kind of like Sliders. It's their meta campaign that came out for 4th edition. Then there's an ad for Munchkin Pathfinder. Pathfinder is awful, so we'll not spend a lot of time on there. And then Ogre. Ogre is a blast as a board game. I love it. They came out with the 6th edition. And they're coming out with Ogre miniatures, which are going to be really nice plastic miniatures for the game. That's a lot of fun if you're interested in kind of post-apocalyptic combat. And then an advertisement for the Pyramid magazine. Again, it's an awesome game. If you're interested, I can actually post some kind of experience I've had playing with it. And it's not complicated. I have 2 daughters. One is 7 years old. She plays Dungeon Fantasy with no issues. My 5-year-old can play Dungeon Fantasy. We have to help her along a little bit sometimes, but the core mechanic of roll your dice, tell me what number you get, then let the referee interpret, anybody can really play this game. My 7-year-old really likes Palladium Fantasy, so she's a little bit more adept than like some other people. But again, this is a great game. Give it a try. If you like it, buy it quickly because when it's gone, it's gone. All right, well, thanks. Hopefully the tripod worked all right. I kind of attached it to a chair. So please give me some feedback, but thanks. Bye.